So as I mentioned, just a couple quick housekeeping items. If you could put yourself on mute throughout the webinar, that would be great. If you have any questions, there is a chat feature. It should be down at the bottom of your screen. Please go ahead and use that. Ask any questions you have. We have a few people on the call that will go ahead and be available to answer those questions. And I'm recording this session, and I'll go ahead and share this with everyone on the call and anyone that signed up after the call. So my name is Clinton Randall. I am the Senior Director of IT Service Management here at Integral, and I really appreciate everyone joining this this morning, afternoon, depending on where you are. So today we're going to be talking about property asset management, the benefits of tracking property asset management. What does that mean, and how we can effectively do that. From personal experience, I've been working with IT service management solutions for the better part of 10 years at this point. And one of the things I really enjoy doing is getting the most value out of the solution and building out some non-standard processes. So property asset management certainly falls in that category. And I have a couple people that are joining me today to talk a little bit further about that. So just a quick agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about Integral and Ivanti, perform introductions for the individuals that have joined me this morning. We'll talk a little bit about why property asset management, the benefits, things along those lines. Then we'll do a quick demonstration, hopefully leaving some time for Q&A. But as I mentioned, if you do have any questions throughout the session, please use the chat, and we'll make sure we get answers to that either during the session or after the webinar is complete. All right, so a little bit about Integral. I do see there's quite a few people on here that I do know, a few people that I don't know, but for anyone that doesn't know who Integral Consulting is, we are a IT services consulting firm. Established in 1998 and have been working with a number of different ITSM solutions over the past 10 years. We're headquartered in Rockville, Maryland, have offices in Aberdeen, Maryland, and Charlottesville, Virginia, but do IT services across the U.S. and globally as well. One of our taglines, I guess, my executive vice president likes to say is we have contracts from Alaska to Afghanistan. So we really, kind of cover the breadth of the global IT services. We do have several certifications focused on quality and process, CMMI, Dev and Service Level 3, ISO 9001, 20000, and 27001. For any of the federal customers, we do hold a top secret facility clearance and have DCAA approved accounting systems to ensure process and quality. We do have several performance awards as well, but I want to take a little bit to talk about our core competencies and then talk a little bit about Ivanti as well. So my main focus is in the IT service management and help desk realm. However, outside of that, we do work with multimodal biometrics, intelligence analysis, cybersecurity, and application development and general IT services. So again, covering the full breadth of IT services. We also do a lot of work with Ivanti. We've been a partner with them for better part of 5 years at this point, actually back when they were Heat Software prior to the merger with Landesk. But a little bit about Ivanti. They are a leader in unified IT with a focus in a number of different areas, but enterprise service and asset management being one of the primary competencies that they focus on. They were established in 1985, coming from Landesk, and are privately owned with headquarters in Salt Lake City, Utah. They have 27,500 plus customers globally, and their solutions manage over 47.5 million endpoints, and have a global reach, 1,700 employees in 23 different countries. So some quick introductions, and then I'll go ahead and turn it over to the next speaker. I've mentioned myself. I've been with the company for 10 years, and I've held different positions, from consultant up to now senior director, and focusing on leading the practice of IT service management and help desk services. With me from Ivanti, I have Marcel Shaw. He's the principal federal solutions architect. And Steve Mazza, who is one of our senior engineers, senior solutions consultant, focused on the IT service management, asset management, and voice solutions. And as I mentioned earlier, we definitely welcome your questions. Please use the chat functionality, and we'll try to leave some time at the end for some live Q&A. But at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Marcel. And I hope you enjoy our presentation.
Hello, everyone. I actually I don't have a slide to share, so it's just going to be my face here for a second. I wanted to talk a little bit about the IT asset management, some things that we've done in the past and how we've extended the IT asset management capabilities to cover things that are not traditional IT. First of all, why do we do it? Why are we doing IT asset management? Well, not only is it a big security risk if we don't, but it's really from a cost, risk, and value perspective. And so traditionally what we're doing is we are tracking these IT assets, not the configurations, but the IT assets, and we're assigning things like, the contracts and knowing the state of their life cycle, the warranties and things like that. And the reason we're doing that from a cost, risk, and value perspective is so that we can make better decisions going forward. I deal with a lot of government customers. The government struggles with that, and a lot of that has to do with their purchasing requirements. But I did have some experiences where we found ways to extend the IT asset management capabilities beyond your traditional IT asset management devices like laptops. We know with IoT and everything coming out, we're going to have to cover those. But we were working with one of the agency, the federal agency up in Alaska. And if you've seen the show Deadliest Catch, they always talk about these quotas. And the quotas, these fish quotas that they get. Well, there's somebody out there setting those quotas, and there's a lot of technical equipment they use to set these quotas. They go out with this technical equipment on these boats, and they drop things in the water. I guess they're trying to figure out how many crabs or how much production of crab there will be, or estimate that. And then they based on that, they set this quota. And the agency that was doing this was running into issues where they were losing the equipment they required to be able to do all of this testing. So they turned to us. They were using our asset management technology, and they said, could we use it to track these assets? And the answer is absolutely yes. There's a lot of features in asset management that allow you to do these things, but it's also important, from their perspective, it was important to extend the IT asset management system to the property or the tools that they were providing their employees to do these tests. So they used the features in there to track it, like where did we purchase the equipment and everything. But the main thing that they had a problem with is they were actually losing equipment or losing track of equipment. And in other words, what boat is this piece of equipment on? And, over time, these things were just getting misplaced. So what they were doing was buying more equipment to replace that. And of course, they had too much at certain times. So with the asset management, they used check-in, check-out features so that the assets could be tracked as they went from one boat or one employee to another. And it's not much different than today. If you have good asset management practices, when somebody goes to a one-stop shop, maybe in their agency, the agencies that I work with, they go somewhere and they take their laptop in to get it fixed or have maintenance done on it. A lot of times they get a loaner. And so they put in check-in, check-out procedures in the asset management program so that they could see that the asset was checked into IT and then checked out. And then there was a loaner that went out. And so they were always able to keep track of where their IT assets were at any given time. And this was no different with the equipment in this case with the fisheries, is that they needed to just track this equipment as it went from boat to boat. So there was a check-in and check-out process that took place. So the asset management is a very powerful tool, and it has the same objective from a cost risk value perspective. You want to know where your stuff is, but other things that were assigned to this property that they were managing were when did they purchase it? When are the warranties up? Very similar things that we were tracking with the laptops. So property management is definitely something that you can take advantage of with IT asset management. And I would encourage anyone that is using IT asset management systems to look at where you might be using tools or giving tools to your end users, your employees, to be able to perform their jobs, and then use the IT asset management system to not only document those tools, but also use it to track where those tools are being used, and also when those tools need to be replaced. So with that said, I know that Steve has some interesting use cases that we talked about, and I'm sure you're going to love to hear how he is working with the system to extend it beyond our traditional IT asset management capabilities. Steve, I see your picture.
Yeah, my picture was kind of fading in and out, so I turned it off. Let me try to turn it back on again. So here we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Very good. So just to kind of underscore some of the things that you said, the way I like to look at it is the purpose for the asset management program and the asset management system that supports that program is to answer some simple questions that are not simple to answer. What have I purchased? What do I have? Where is it? Who has it or who's responsible for it? And how much is it costing me? That's kind of the big one. So
cost, risk, and value, right?
Exactly. So I'm going to share my screen and take a look at the system and see how it does those things. All right. So let me know when that comes up.
I can see it.
All right. And I think I'm going to, if I can, turn off my camera again just to reduce the amount of bandwidth. Okay, so when you log into the system, what it does is it brings you to a home screen which provides you with a dashboard. And there's multiple dashboards predefined in the system, and those dashboards are built with multiple dashboard parts. And so each role can have its own dashboard that's focused on the things that particular role might be interested in. And what we see right now is the dashboard for an asset manager. And this gives you at the very highest level information about, like, okay, what do I have? So here I can see I've got laptops and desktops and servers. I've got some other stuff too. And this is live data and it's interactive dashboard. So for instance, if you can see that a large percentage of what I have is laptops and desktops. And if I kind of disable those, I can see deeper into the estate and see other types of information, types of assets that are in the system. So I can see kind of at a high level what I have, and I can see where it is. So this is how those assets are distributed by location. And so on any one of these things, I can drill into this information. If I click on it, so here's, there's 168 things in Salt Lake City. If I click on that, it's going to take me right into a listing of those assets in Salt Lake City. So this is, it's interactive and it's live data. And then down here at the bottom, we can see, okay, well, who is financially responsible for these assets? And here's distribution of those assets by organizational unit. So we can see that product management, for instance, has 31 assets associated with it. And again, if I click on that, it'll take me to those 31 assets. So with that said, what I'd like to do is also talk about some of the reporting that you can get after, at the end of the day, when you're using this system to manage your assets, you're putting data into the system, and then you can get reports out of the system. So what I want to do is go and take a look at just a couple of those, and then mention that reports are, there's a lot of reports that come out of the box, and those reports are modifiable, and you can add your own reports as well. So if I look at specifically things that are related to, for an asset manager, we can look at maybe our total cost, total purchase price, no, not that one, total purchase price overall. So here we go. And so what that's going to do is that's going to show, okay, how much have I spent? And it's broken down by organizational unit with roll-ups to their parent organizations. So, as I said, you can modify these. You can add your own reports. So here's a depreciation report. So it's going to say, okay, well, we looked at, how much have I spent, and then here's a report showing what's the remaining value, or which assets still have remaining value, and what is that. So a depreciation report, pretty easily out of the system. And the other thing that I want to look at is the asset repository. So if we go in and we look at hardware assets, what I want to do is focus on a couple of assets that are different, that are well, not similar to each other. So first, with a server, which is an IT piece of equipment, expensive. Certainly a lot of money goes into servers, and it's important to know, okay, well, what do we have, and what did we get for the money that we spent? So I want to look at this asset, and then also a couple of other assets. I want to look at a vehicle and actually a firearm, which a customer asked us to be able to manage firearms. And what we'll see as we look at those is that a lot of different types of information can be tracked for those different types of assets. So starting with this server, we'll see that there's multiple tabs of information displayed across the middle of the screen. And each one of those tabs can be filled with various information. And then there's also areas where there are space for buttons. So Marcel mentioned check in and check out. So as part of managing the life cycle of an asset, that asset can be checked in and checked out using these buttons, or using these buttons across the top here. And again, additional buttons can be added, and the system comes with a great deal of actions that can be applied to assets, and you can add to those as well. So there's data and actions, and when we talk about the check in and check out, what that's going to do is the system then can track all of those check-ins and check-outs for this particular piece of equipment. And so here we can see a history of where it's been and who's who's had it over time. There's also the ability to display discovery data, and that's important for IT equipment. It's less important maybe for some other types of equipment. Again, you can track software on it, and some other types of IT information. And then there's the ability to track user assets. So what that means is whichever user is responsible for this particular piece of equipment, here's a listing of all of the other equipment that same user is responsible for. So this is the other equipment that's assigned to that same user.
So is this where we would put in the extensive property stuff? Would you recommend?
Um,
Oh,
can you say that again?
it's Marcel. I guess we could, the thing I would point out is just that this is all customizable, right? So we can add in any additional property that's not necessarily the IT devices
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So I can go and let me just point out a couple more tabs, and then I'm going to go look at a non-IT piece of equipment. So for a piece of equipment, you can track contracts that are related to that piece of equipment. So here we can see that we've got a purchase equipment, and then we've got maintenance and some entitlements associated with that. We can also do vendor management through this system. So we can understand who the vendor is related to a piece of asset, a piece of equipment, and as we interact with that vendor through various processes, we can complete vendor scorecards, and then the vendor gets a total value that we can use, that we can look at when we're interacting with that vendor. We can understand whether the vendor is giving us quality service or not. And then there's also an area for finance information. So this talks about the ownership of the asset. How much did it cost us? What's its current depreciated value? Again, what was the purchase order? We can go look at the purchase order and all the details related to the purchase order for this piece of equipment. The vendor I already mentioned. And then we want to know how much something is costing me. And so that can be not just the acquisition cost, but its ongoing cost. And so there's the ability to track financial transactions. And so here we can see the kinds of information that's tracked on that. So Marcel mentioned that we can add additional types of information. We can add additional fields, for instance. And so when we go and take a look at the vehicle, we'll see that there's a couple of changes to how this financial information is tracked. And then there's also the ability to apply attachments to a piece of equipment. So in this case, I've got like you can have an owner's manual, or maybe some other information, maybe about how to get support or something like that. So we already looked at the inventory transactions, and then there's also the ability to support like an inventory scanner. And every time a piece of equipment gets scanned, an entry goes into this log of when it was scanned and who scanned it. So that can be helpful for maintaining inventory.
That could also be used. These scanners are commonly used during that check-in, check-out process, right? So they can trigger, a change of a field in there. So with the vehicle example, I guess you're talking about, you could use a scanner to check in a car or check it out.
Correct. Yep. Yeah. Whether it's maybe it changes hands when it goes in for some maintenance, if that's done like on a for an organization that has a large number of vehicles and does their own maintenance, you could use that check in and check out as that vehicle moves from person to person. So here is a vehicle, and we can see that there's some specific details associated with a vehicle that we didn't see when we were looking at that other asset. So for instance, here it can track fuel type for this asset, or it can track the distance that somebody uses the vehicle for commuting to and from work, and where it is kept. When it's in its garage, where is it kept? So then there's the other kinds of information that we saw with the other asset, your warranty kinds of information, your your purchase date and in-service date. Now there's also this vehicle log. So what we saw previously was, we saw that you can track financial information and financial transactions against an asset. Well, a customer came to us and said, well, we need to track vehicles, and one of the things that we do is we track transactions that go against that vehicle. But what we want to do is we also want to know what the odometer reading is for each of those transactions. So we were able to do that with this system, give the customer the ability to track, in this case, the kinds of financial costs that go along with a vehicle. So whether it be a lease payment, or it be maintenance, here's an oil change, or just typically fueling costs, can all be tracked against that vehicle. And then then you can understand not just how much the vehicle cost initially, but what are the ongoing costs over a period of time, be that its entire lifetime, or for a given quarter, or for a year. That's all available. So we saw before user assets. Here's a listing of all the other assets for this particular piece of equipment. Now I didn't mention before that there's a disposal process. So there's nothing in here right now because this system has been because the vehicle is in use, but the system supports a full life cycle. So you can track a piece of equipment from its purchase order through to all of those check-ins and check-outs and maintenance transactions through to disposal. And so then when an asset is disposed, the information about that disposal will be listed here on this disposal tab. So here's inventory transactions. Those are the check-ins and check-outs. What we didn't see before, though, there's also an audit history. So the system at a field level will keep track of all the changes made to an asset over time. So this is completely auditable. There's pages and pages of information here for that audit history, and so that's very important for a lot of organizations. So we saw an IT server, we saw a vehicle, and then a customer asked us to be able to manage firearms because it's an organization that does safety training for firearms, and so they want to be able to track certain particular information about firearms. So here's details, very different than what we could see for a server or for a vehicle. For instance, here we've got a type, and we've got the action. So it could be I don't know what double action means, but that's what they needed to track. Fully automatic, semi-automatic, or single action. So these are the kinds of details specific to just this type of asset. And you can see that it's actually a denser screen because there's a lot of information that they wanted to be able to track. So this is another kind of use case, another example. So this one, in this case, we're tracking preventative maintenance against this particular piece of equipment. So the maintenance has to be done every 6 months, and then so you can track the dates of when that maintenance is done. All right, and then there's also the ability to track work orders against a piece of property. So in this case, there was a work order to clean and inspect this particular asset, and so that was done. We can see, it was done by Aileen Burke, and if we go in and look at the detail of that, we can see more information about that. That work order, that task, that activity. So those activities that can be tracked against an asset, they can have their own priority, they can have a service level, they can have details, and so we can track a lot of information about work orders against property, and including there's a full workflow engine in the system, so we can take a look at in this case maybe a rather simple workflow, but there's a powerful workflow engine in the system. And so what that allows us to do is track things like approvals, or in this case, track maintenance and activities that are required to be performed on a piece of equipment. So that gives us an idea of kind of the purpose of the system and the asset repository. And one of the things that I wanted to kind of underscore is that the system is extensible. So I mentioned you could add your own reports. Well, you can add your own types of equipment, as I've done here, adding pistol and vehicle to a system that has as its baseline the ability to track a lot of details about equipment. So I can't go into everything, but I'm hoping that that was enough to give you kind of a flavor of the system, both in terms of its purpose and function, but also its ability to extend into other purposes. So any questions on that?
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate you showing that, and Marcel, I appreciate the information up front. So yeah, and at this point, let's definitely open it up to questions. There were a couple questions that we had within the chat. One was regarding actually both of them were regarding the scanners. So just so everyone's aware that there is a scanner barcode scanning capability within this solution, and it is available on Android-based scanners, as well as any mobile device that is based on iPhone or Android. So there's quite a few capabilities there, and allows us to scan in those devices and then perform actions to transfer devices and update specific information about a particular device. So there was another question about the ability to transfer using a scanner, and would like to see that. We don't currently have that available within this presentation. However, I'll follow up separately regarding that that capability and showing how to do that. So if anyone is interested in that, definitely let me know, and I will certainly send that information over to them as well. But at this point, if there's any other questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question, or if you'd like to, please go ahead and put it in the chat.
So if there's no other questions, or while people are entering in questions, I'll just highlight some other capabilities of the system. So there is a product catalog, and what that allows for is for setting standards of what what the organization can purchase, and by doing that, then you can understand from a catalog perspective, from a standard perspective, how many assets you have of that, how many instances of that particular standard that you have in your estate. There's also a full asset request capability. So I mentioned that there's a workflow engine, and that workflow engine is used to drive the request process, the request workflow. So people can put in requests for a piece of equipment, and those requests are completely configurable. They can be easily driven by what's in your product catalog. So meaning you can limit people to request only things that are in your product catalog, or you can allow them to make requests outside of that catalog if you choose. But then the details of each of those requests can be tracked, and the approvals associated with those requests are all tracked and recorded in the system. And I did mention purchase orders. So there's a full procurement capability tracking in the system. So you can tie assets back to purchase orders. You can create purchase orders in this system, or what's commonly done is you can interface to a procurement or an accounting system and have those purchase orders fed into this system so that so the assets can be tracked to the purchase orders that are generated on the accounting system.
Steve, there's a question in the chat about seeing the capability to track software assets. Would you take people into that real quick and show them that capability?
Yeah, so let's go all the way back to the home screen, because I mentioned that each role has a different dashboard made up of different and so for somebody who is interested in software, there's a couple of software oriented dashboards. And so, here's one that just shows, okay, in terms of the software that we have in the system, what manufacturers are represented, and what's the usage frequency of that software, and then what's the distribution across various different operating systems. So again, at a very high level, that's what the dashboard provides. But then we can do things like, when we're looking at a piece of equipment, we can see, okay, well, what software is installed on that piece of equipment. So this is kind of the equipment that gets discovered. So this would be supplied by, whatever discovery tool is available. And then there's also the ability to track licensable software. And so we can see, okay, that there's entitlements that have been associated with this particular server. There's certain software entitlements associated to this server. And so what we could do is we can go and look at all of the software assets that are being tracked in the system. And so we can see, there's software from Adobe, from Apple, and from other organizations in this system. And if we look at one of these, we can see that the system can track a lot of information about a particular piece of software. So, we can find the information about it, whether it's a suite, but then we can also track entitlements. So if we had entitlements for this particular title, we can track that here. And we can then also track where those entitlements have been assigned. So let me see if I can, if I go into contracts.
And Steve, while you're bringing that up, I just want to clarify one thing. So what we're looking at here is the software asset management components. But in theory, you want to make sure that you understand what's actually installed. And as Steve had mentioned, that there's the ability to pull in information about what's actually installed on devices, so you have a better understanding of your license position. Ivanti has several discovery options available that we can utilize for that purpose, but also we can utilize other discovery solutions as well. Microsoft SCCM is a great solution that we utilize quite a bit, and there's a direct connector within Ivanti to pull that information in. But in theory, we can pull in any discovery source. as long as we have the ability to pull that data either from that solution, or that data can push that information, from that solution to Ivanti. So certainly a lot of capabilities there, and once we have that information, that will just layer on top of the ownership information and provide a rich description of what's actually owned within the environment.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. So that gave me a chance to pull up a particular software entitlement record. So here we can see information for Microsoft SQL Server, and so the kinds of information that can be tracked, including your costs, the effective date of this entitlement, the effective dates, and how many what your entitlement quantity is. And then we can also track, okay, so you have, an entitlement of 20, we can see that entitlement has been assigned to 4 assets. So where has it been deployed? So here you can see the tie between this particular software title, entitlement, and the assets that it's been deployed to. And so we can have other kinds of details related to the contract as well. So, is this downgradable? What kind of versions are supported by this entitlement? Again, we could track, who the financial owner is, and renewal details. So when do you want to get a notification about a renewal for this contract? What the renewal amount is expected to be, what the frequency is. What are the termination details in your contract? So after a contract has been terminated, you can have the information about that in here, or what kind of details are in the contract regarding termination can be tracked in here. So does that help understand? There's a lot of capabilities in terms of software that can be tracked.
Great. Well, we do have about 15 minutes remaining, so I want to give everyone one last chance to ask any questions. I believe I've captured everything within the chat window, but if I haven't, please feel free to step up and ask your questions. There was a question about BigFix, whether or not we can pull that information in. There is not an out-of-the-box connection available within the system. However, there's capabilities to pull in that information via either web services or a data import connection. So certainly, flexible, some flexibility there with the different solutions. All right. Well, if no one has any other questions, no, and if you do have any questions, feel free to, reach out to me after the call. I'm going to send a copy of the recording as well as the presentation to everyone on this call, as well as anyone that did sign up. So feel free to reach back out to me if there are any other questions. Do have a couple other questions coming in. How long does an implementation take? I'm going to give you the consultant answer, and it depends. It really depends on what level of maturity you want to get to. So typically what we'll do is during the initial discovery phase, we'll perform an assessment of your current maturity level as it relates to asset lifecycle management, and from there we'll put together a plan on implementation and what's going to be the best path to get the most value out of the solution as quickly as possible. So can't really give a good answer to that because it varies from customer to customer.
Yeah, I think we can add a little bit to that just by saying that out of the box with the Ivanti solution, you get a lot of capability. So when we talk about what the implementation is. The implementation is just is just getting it to form and fit to your operations. But all of the core functionality is available right out of the box. Like I pointed out those reports. There's over 50 reports that come with the system out of the box. The asset types are already set up there. So what we have to do is we have to do things like we have to add your locations into the system, or if there's any particular asset subtypes that you want to track, we add those into the system. But a lot of the capability just comes out of the box.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. One other question: is it possible to automatically get contract data from other systems such as SAP, Microsoft, to avoid double entry? Marcel, if you are still available, I'm going to see if you can maybe chime in on that question. I don't know if he maybe stepped away.
I'm still here.
There
I'm
he
sorry.
is. Perfect.
Could you repeat the question? So I'm having an internet problem, and I'm pinging my service provider, telling him to fix it.
Great. So the question was, is it possible to automatically get contract data from other systems such as SAP or Microsoft to avoid double entry? So it looks like they're pulling in contract data, but also some data normalization. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, we can definitely do that. We can directly set up a connector into an asset management system, but something that we've done on a few occasions is use the Ivanti data analytics, which has these built-in B2B connectors, and it's really cool because you basically provide your credentials to their site, and then it pulls in the data, real time. And then, we can use that tool to normalize that data if we need to do normalization. If we didn't need to do normalization, we could probably just pull it right over into the asset management system. But if we needed to do normalization, the tools that we have there to normalize data are really great with the data analytics tool that we have. We've just be aware this product is attached to our endpoint management product, but we have solutions out there that are where people are just using that particular feature. They may be an SCCM shop, which is a competitor to that product, but the data analytics is a very unique piece, and I would definitely take a look at it if you want to normalize your data before you get it in there. If you don't have a tool like that, you're going to have to use an SQL expert and somebody who knows how to write scripts and all that to normalize the data, and that can be expensive. And that person usually drives the nicest car because you can't afford to get rid of them. So, definitely we have some great options for, getting information from your partners.
Great, thank you. All right, any last questions? Okay, well, again, thank you guys for joining. Thank you everyone for joining. I really appreciate it, and I hope everyone is enjoying the holiday season. And as I mentioned, I'll go ahead and reach out after this call with the recording, the presentation, and if there's any other questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Definitely would love to continue this conversation. So enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll talk to everyone soon. Thank you.